Hi, welcome to Matt's Garage. Today we're going to be rebuilding a manual steering box. This is going to be out of a 1966 Ford Bronco, but it's a similar design, I think, in the Mustangs and some Jeeps and other trucks and cars of the era, because most of these were made by Saginaw. Named after the town in Michigan? Or is the town named after the steering box? I don't know. This episode is going to take place over several days because I'm going to take it apart, clean it, disassemble it, inspect it, and then order parts for it. So I'll be doing my wardrobe changes like Lady Gaga, but it's all going to be done in this episode. Some of you may be asking, why am I keeping a manual steering box? Some of you like spending money on parts and I don't. So I'm going to keep it. I like it, it's vintage. Plus I've never done it before. So let's find out how it works. And then in a future episode, I'm going to talk about how I'm going to be converting the one-piece steering shaft that comes with these old vehicles to a modern collapsible one with U-joints. I have the parts on the way. I'm just waiting for those before I do all that. So even after I get this rebuilt, I'm going to put it back in temporarily for mock-up so I can get my measurements to the steering column. Okay, with that, let's get onto this thing. You have to remove the Pitman arm from the steering tie rod. And the way you do that is you break loose the castle nut, not quite all the way, but enough that it's covering the very top thread. And then you bang on the side of the Pitman arm. And you do that with a ball peen hammer or a nice big hammer. Go around enough times, change the angle enough, it should theoretically drop loose. If it doesn't, you are in trouble. All right, so 3/4 inch bolts, 3 of them. I'm going to just first get them loosened up with a breaker bar. There she is. A beauty. When you've got something this crusty and greasy, don't hit it with like a spray-on degreaser. You're just going to make a mess. You want to go through and with something, a combination of screwdrivers and scrapers and whatever, brushes. You want to get this built-up stuff off as best as you can. Trust me, it'll save you a ton of mess. And then and it also gives whatever degreaser you're using a chance to really get a bite on the first try. It may take you 2 or 3 passes with a degreaser, but it's way better than having it try to go through like a couple of millimeters of baked on crust from decades of use. Little spider houses. All right. Cool, man. So I'm gonna dump this stuff out. Look at all that. Just imagine that dissolved in a degreaser. It would just be, ugh. So now the bolts go in, as well as the steering box. And here comes the secret number dos. Easy off. Don't bother with the degreasers, man. This stuff, wait, caveat. Okay. If you're interested in keeping your seals, do not use oven cleaner. It'll eat the seals, or at least degrade them. So I'm told. I don't have any experience with that. I don't care about the seals. I'm replacing them. So if I reuse the steering box, so I could just go to town. Oh, it's thick. Oh, it's overwhelming. Hold on. Oh, kind of forgot about that. Now don't use up the whole can on the first go, okay? It's got to last you this whole piece here. So what you do is you give it a misting, and then all the surfaces, right? Bolts and nuts and all that stuff. Give it a good little misting. Then, throw your gloves away and step away before you asphyxiate. Oh, yeah, it's thick. Go ahead and let that chooch for however long you can, at least a couple hours. Overnight is great. Then we're gonna come back, clean it off, and hit it again. This works on engines, transmissions, anything you don't care about preserving the seals on. Oven cleaner, man, it's just such a labor saver. All right, we'll be back. I wish I had I wish I wasn't so lazy, because then I would just set up a time lapse to show you eating, like the stuff eating it, but that's a whole level of resources I don't have. Plus I'm on my lunch break, so I gotta get back to work. We are back a few hours later, and we are going to wipe and reapply. Scalp out, sponge. 60 years of grease and grime. It's pretty impressive. It's like each time you go over it, you find a new patch of thick stuff, even though you think you got it all. All right, just to give it a little bit of a fighting chance, I need to give it some mechanical scrubbing here. So I'm using orange-based degreaser. I would prefer to just do the oven cleaner method twice, and I'm gonna do it a second time, but I want it to be done when I do it the second time. So I'm just gonna agitate some of the more stubborn spots here. It's amazing, it just keeps changing color on me. Oh, good night, sweet prince. All right, it's been a minute. I let it go a little too long, but that's okay. I've learned not to worry about stuff, man. It all works out in the end. So I'm gonna pat this dry, carry it over to the sink, and just wash it, and then that's it. All right, this is looking much cleaner. First thing I'm gonna do is take the nut for the Pitman Arm Off. I think it's 1.5 inches. I don't know, because this is not actually marked. It's like a socket wrench for a Bronco axle or something like that, or a Jeep axle, I'm not sure. Okay. Now I don't want to do a lot of thinking when I go to install the Pitman arm back, like I want to know what tooth it was in. So I have this scribe, and I'm just going to mark, put in a pretty deep gash in both the sector shaft here and the Pitman arm, and something I can see through, like paint or something, you know. It's 50-50 whether like one of these front end service type pulleys will be able to pull this off. I have my doubts, but we'll give it a try. Well, it did. It definitely, there you go. I really wasn't sure if that was going to work or not. So there's really two seals on this. There's this seal, the sector shaft seal, and there's this seal. That's it. And there's a gasket underneath these things, but it's a very simple mechanism. Okay, so these are Preload Shims. 2 Preload Shims. This one looks cracked, but it doesn't feel too bad. Not a lot of slop in it, so it's a good sign. Be mindful of the guts. I'm not sure what this does. I'm just going to loosen it. So if you screw this in, it'll push the top out. That gasket's in pretty good shape. Or is it a shim? I don't know, but I'm going to keep that just in case. Okay, so there was a plunger in here. I don't know what the purpose of it is, so I'm going to open this up, get whatever this is out. I think, oh no, it's just a plug of, oh, just a plug of grease that came out. So that must be the fill hole, I'm guessing. That's how you fill it with grease. Let's see if you can see inside here. So when you spin this, you see that going around? That's how this whole thing works. All right, so that's, so in there, there's another one that sits taper side up, like this. And this one sits taper side down, like that. This was kind of stuck in the up position, and I couldn't get it to move the way I wanted, and I'm just trying to get it out. And there's got to be some position at which it comes out easily. But I'm just having trouble figuring out what that is. And I don't know if it's the seal is jamming me up here. It might be the seal. I was running out of that, so that was good. All right, so that's it. So look in here, there's a seal and then a brass bushing that this rides on. I have no idea why that was so hard. It really shouldn't be unless this is bent, which is possible. I had a bent sector shaft on my other Bronco. Like if they take a big hit against this thing, it'll bend it. It's not scratched at all. It's actually in really good shape. I thought there was going to be a bunch of balls, but there's really not. I'm not really sure how this is held in here. There's a snap ring that holds that in. I can see that now. I'm not sure how this mechanism is held in. There's obviously a pin that goes through and these locks on the side. So I need to clean this up so I can get a better look at it. If I'm being honest, I still really can't tell like what's going on in here, so I'm going to take this snap ring off. So you should just come off now, because if there's a snap ring, it's like this weird split washer type thing. Oh my God. Okay, so is that shattered into a million pieces, or is it designed to be like that? There was a washer sitting that held this in, okay? And it looks to me like so much pressure was put against it that it just shattered. I mean, it just broke into a bunch of pieces. Just crazy. So that to me indicates that this was like, the steering was sloppy and somebody wanted to tighten it up, and they whiffed on the thing so hard that it pulled this adjustment nut. It's so weird though, because normally it tightens down. I don't know why that washer disintegrated like that. That's super strange, but we'll have to get a new washer if we use this. So I was wrong. There's no balls on this thing. It's a super simple mechanism. It basically just spins. This meshes with this. This has no bearings. This is solid. This is what attaches to your steering shaft. That meshes with this, and that's what turns it left or right. And all of this is in pretty good shape except for that washer. Even the bearings are in really good shape. I'm kind of surprised. That bearing race at the bottom, I have no idea how you get that out. So I'm probably not gonna. There's just that one brass bushing. Is it just the one? No, there's two brass bushings. And the second brass bushing in here feels like the one that the shaft was getting caught up on. The tricky part about those is when you bang them in, it's really hard not to muck it up. And the number is USA something 12350. And this is one bushing. You can kind of see the ring. And there's a second shorter one further in, and that's what keeps that and that in line. It's just so tight though. It might be that this up here has gotten swollen from rust, and that's what was catching. So I might need to take sandpaper and just sort of clean that off. But I want to be able to drop this in clean if I'm going to rebuild it. If I can't get this through these existing bearings, there's no way I'm going to get them in through new ones, if I even need to replace these. All right, this is where we're at. I've identified what this seal is. This one, I don't see any markings on, but this is another seal. So I need to go try to locate one of those, okay? I believe this shaft is catching here where it's rusty, is catching on the brass. So I'm gonna take sandpaper and sand smooth this edge of it. This part doesn't ride on any seals. This part does. Then this rides on brass, and this rides on the brass bushings that are in there. I've seen rebuild kits that have all these parts for Mustangs, and I think they're probably pretty close. So I just need to go see if I can source that. Meanwhile, I'm going to clean all this up, and then if I can get the kit, we'll get back together and put it back together. All right, I've been doing a little cleaning up, and what I discovered was my theory was correct, that there was a ridge here where this lip of the sector shaft that sticks out past the body, past the seal, it was corroded. So I took some very fine 600 grit sandpaper and I just worked the corrosion off of that and then wiped it clean. And now, you remember how stuck that was. Now it just goes right past both brass bushings, no problem, and spins smoothly. So that takes away my fear of the sector shaft being bent, which means this steering box is basically rebuildable. The only trick is getting parts. So for that busted up washer, this is about the outside diameter that I need. Let me get my calipers. So the outside diameter is 0.86 inches, 0.87 inches, and the inside diameter is 1/2 inch. It's not a standard thing, so I'm going to go to McClendon's. They have a pretty decent hardware rack and see if I can find a thin washer that's got a big enough inner and a small enough outer. There's some vertical scarring, but it's so minor, like I don't actually feel anything with my nail. So I might leave those in there because I'm telling you, at least in my experience, setting these is a massive, massive pain. And this is all good news. That means I can reuse this steering box and save like $1,000, guys. I think the kits I've seen, the seals are only a few bucks each. Even if I got the whole kit for the rebuild, which is both those bushings and the ball cages and races, it's like $60. So I'm gonna go order the parts I need, and we'll meet back here after I find this washer. That's gonna be the key. I have some updates. I'm clearly an unusual person because apparently there's not enough demand for these manual steering boxes that the rebuild kits are available. Tom's doesn't carry them. I didn't see any of the other vendors carrying them. This is a Gemmer 24J series box, JC05. The Scouts had Gemmer 24Ds, and up until about 2016, there were some NOS kits for the Scout ones, but they weren't quite the same because instead of these brass bushings or bearings, they had needle bearings. But what they did have was where the output shaft is, they had this very specialized gasket. And I think Tom's has a rubber version of this, but not the one with the metal ring, but it'll probably still work. So Tom's carries the seal for where the sector shaft comes out, and I think this seal, but nothing else for this. I've looked all over the internet, I can't find it. Thankfully, this one's in pretty good shape. So I'm just gonna put it back together as it was, and I'm gonna run it till either I need to get a power steering upgrade or it explodes. Hopefully not like in the middle of me quartering hard. The only parts that are bad on this is this washer that sits underneath the bolt, which is this is the bolt that puts pressure on it. So this washer had disintegrated. I found a washer with the proper ID, but the OD is just a little too big. I'm going to show you how I'm going to deal with that. The only other issue is this shim. This shim has a little bit of a crack in it. It's split right there. And there's a tiny bit of a score right here in that mating surface. So what I might do is just support it with a little bit of Right Stuff RTV, which is stuff I use to seal the head on my air compressor that's still working, knock on wood. And so those are the only two faults. Now, in order to get the OD of this to be smaller, I need to chuck it up into a lathe, but I don't have a lathe. So I'm going to show you what I did. I took a bolt, ran a washer and a nut down on it. Now I'm going to put this down on it, and I'm going to put this nut on here, okay? I found like the inside of a spring bushing or something which fits well here. So I'm going to put this in the vise, and I'm going to put my impact driver on this and spin it at the same time using this on here to wear down the OD until it fits into that piece. So homemade lathe here. Just gonna clean the box a little more, some acetone. I'm gonna paint this after I get it assembled. Now, one part I don't have is that sector shaft seal. So I ordered that, and it's just gonna go in nice and easy because we clean that schmutz off of it. You could put oil on this too, it's probably recommended, but acetone is eating my gloves. Now, I don't know if there's a trick to this, like whether I need to get it. There. I guess I can see if I get the worm gear in first and then the sector shaft. Oh yeah, that's definitely better. Then this bearing, then the race, we'll preload that, so no need to worry about that. So we're going to get that rid of and fill this little gap, then shim it and go from there. And this is the last time this thing will ever get rebuilt, because it's not like the kits are going to all of a sudden appear out of nowhere. So again, just a dab of rid of where the crack is. Oh, oops, didn't mean to do that. Click, click. All right, so those are torqued to spec. And again, this is never, ever, ever going to be rebuilt again. So I'm just going to run the thinnest layer of ridiv around here, just to keep everybody honest. So it's this, and this bolt, and this snap ring. First goes the bolt. Then goes a washer. Then the snap ring. I have to thread this on. Looking back on the videos, this was sticking way out. And I think that's why that washer was destroyed, because it was pulling the pinion shaft, the sector shaft up when it should be pushing it down. And so now I'm basically, to set the preload on the bench, I'm running it through the turns, and right there it feels good. If I do like a little bit more, like that's a quarter turn, say, you see how I hit the resistance? You saw my finger slow down there? So I don't want that. I don't want any binding. So turn it back to there. Still pretty smooth. So I think that's good. That looks really good. Professional rebuild. So that's it. Once the seal comes, I will bang that into place. It's a NOS seal. No, there's no button to make it go faster, but it's a NOS seal. Let me just make sure it's the same size. Yep, same size. Put some oil on it so I don't screw it up. Just gonna oil that lip. So that's flush now. That's where I wanted it. Now we gotta find the marks that we made. Okay, I see that mark, I think. And that is my completed, rebuilt Gemmer steering box. Oh. Now it's done. Well, there she is, done and rebuilt. Looks not too bad. Next step is going to be measuring for the steering shaft, but that's another episode. So I guess the moral of the story is, if you're going to be weird and try to reuse a manual steering box, get ready for challenges. But it's a super simple process, so I hope I demonstrated that for you guys. My tightness setting will be adjusted once I actually get some resistance on it. And you got to make sure you're not binding. Error on the side of loose, okay? I don't want you guys going out there getting yourselves hurt. And if you don't know what you're doing, don't do it. Okay. But That's it for this episode, and we will see you next time on Matt's Garage.